The Europeans at that time were black skinned. They were black skinned up to 5000 BC, and the Iranian ones had the white color skin. So this is very important. But they say in that map, original map which I showed, going this way, that way, Narsingan map, they claim that this uh, white people came to India, settled in Punjab, Haryana, and then they hybridized others, Indians who were black, like Andaman people. And that's why in that chart you saw East Asian, Southeast Asian mixing of Andaman and all those with Indians. That was not needed. I am going to tell you a story, very common story, everyday story, that the patient comes, tells me, I ask what happened and when happened. He tells me, डॉक्टर साहब व्हाट मैं क्या बताऊं, मेरे एक चचेरे भाई हैं, उनकी एक लड़की है, उसकी बड़ी दिन से शादी की कोशिश हो रही थी लेकिन मिल नहीं रहा था. फाइनली जाके वो इटावा में तय हुआ, तो फिर अब लास्ट में 15 मिनट बाद वो बताते हैं कि उनके यहाँ जो पार्टी खाई मैंने, द फूड आई टुक देयर, दैट कॉज्ड मी वॉमिटिंग एंड डायरिया. So in this story, I pick up just vomiting, diarrhea, and party, and the rest of the description I just delete from my mind. Otherwise, I won't be able to make the diagnosis. So the thing is, the same applies to writing, or rather constructing history. There may be a lot of things which may be entirely irrelevant for fixing three things. We need to fix three things: place, time, and person. Person you can fix by means of DNA. Place, time you can fix by radiocarbon dates. Any other date I never accept. And third thing is Desh Kal Patra, and the location you should confirm by archaeology. If these things are not united, then we are just beating about bush, and we shall never be able to reach to correct and universally acceptable history. I have written quite a few books about which I am not going to talk much. Most of them have become out of print. So, one Hindi one is still in the market. These two are in the market, but I have just also put them for free PDF on websites for the benefit of interested readers. And now, current workers in the field of genetics are actually not geneticists. They are from biotechnology, mathematics, computer science, statistics, etc. They see DNA genes as products of admixture from different sources of origin, whereas in reality, the DNAs are primarily the products of natural selection. So it is not admixture, but rather from one various forms arise, just like from one Brahm different forms arose. But there was a racist theory. So I was talking about the differences between a geneticist and a genetic technician. Just the same difference as ophthalmologist and optician, electrician, physicist, electrical physicist, electrical engineer, and electrician. So the people whose publications you are reading, they are not geneticists. They have never studied biology. But They have gone through computer techniques, how to deal with the data, matrix analysis, etc. And then they come out with a result with the racist theoretical background in their mind. Now, the current claim by these DNA technicians is this, that the Dravid male only came from Neolithic Iran to India, then mixed with Andaman Islanders who lived in India then, and then later somebody came from this steppe, Central Asia, Ukraine, bringing the language and mixed with this to produce the Aryan. And this is their picture, and the same group of authors, Vagish Narsingham and Dr. Rai and Dr. Shinde, there is a list of 100 authors. In one publication, one becomes the first, in another, the another becomes the first. And David Reich is present in all of them. After having so much, I will come to the writings of everyone. I will cut and paste from from their book to make the things clear. Now I will talk about. Sorry, in this hodgepodge, I forgot to tell you about one thing which is relevant here. Is my book In Quest of the Dates of the Vedas. In this book, actually, I applied my own technique. That is, suppose there is a set of lion, no cotton but wool, no wheat but barley, and things like that. In Rig Veda, we need to find in Indian archaeology and carbon date that point where exactly this situation prevailed. And similarly, the plants, suppose in Atharva Veda, River Saraswati has been always mentioned as a goddess, and in this Rig Veda, it is a river primarily and revered as a goddess. So that means by the time of Atharva Veda, it had dried and it had become a goddess living in the heaven. Similarly, about Vedas, that is willow, Atharva Veda clearly says that those who have seen this tree are great people. It is divine and it lives in the Himalayas upstream. Nobody has seen it. But the Rig Veda says, see there, the bird is sitting in the willow tree. So, this difference of time, I have used this type of method and radiocarbon dated the willow tree ends in India at 3000 BC as said by Constantine. By this method, I have dated Rig Veda with Mehergarh, exact similarity of everything, plants, animals in Rig Veda, they exactly match in Mehergarh. Then Yajur Veda period matches extended Indus Valley civilization, and Atharva Veda is slightly after that. But that is not my today's topic. So, now we come to the Ganjdare village. Ganjdare is a location where which has been carbon dated 7820 BC. And this village lasted only for 50 years. These people were trying to cultivate barley, but the barley variety was wild. Wild means that its seeds shatter and ripen and shatter immediately, so that when they are ripe, you cannot harvest it. That means wild. And domesticated means that the seed, barley, does not shatter immediately after ripening, but you can harvest it and take it home. So this was wild variety of barley, and they were also eating wild this goat. They were none of them were domesticated as per domestication criteria. So these were not farmers, but they probably had migrated from someone. It was a temporary human helmet in Iran, in the Zagros Mountains, and its DNA. One female was a bone was found from which DNA was extracted. This was labeled GG13A. They abandoned the site, and Mehergarh, India, had domesticated goats much before that, as well as cultivated barley also much before that time. If I put a hypothesis that these people were migrants from Mehergarh, then we will have to test it against the genetics. So, DNA of Ganjdare. Ganjdare has been compared with the Rakhi Garhi DNA by Vasant Shinde. And you can see here the yellow thing in the center, that is Ganjdare. These people, uh, the genetic workers, they have considered it to be one of the 4 or 5 original DNAs, unmixed primary DNAs from which other people evolved by admixture. So that's why it is pure yellow. And here you can say Indus Valley Plain, Shahri Sokhta. Shahri Sokhta is located just west of Pakistan. And there we find Indian type of bull and everything in the Bronze Age. So they claim that the pink color is the Southeast Asian, and they came to India. They came to Andaman also. It is all labeled there. You see, the pink is Southeast Asia, and it mixes with the Iranian. Now, I would like to go to the dissection of these Ganjdare DNA studied by Golenghi Laurentini, whose studies have been ignored by our honorable, prestigious workers in the field. So you see here it is Ganjdare, okay? Ganjdare, it is South Asia, it is their original. I have added something here for others to comprehend it. So Ganjdare falls within the gene pool of South Asia. It is similar to the fact that when I am in England and somebody, I die there, and somebody studies my skeleton, my DNA will not fall in the others' DNA of English people, but in this type of plot, it will come to something like this in India. This is another analysis which enlarges it, magnifies it, and you can see that Ganjdare is very closely located to Makrani DNA, which is in Pakistan, Sindh, Baluchistan, Makran. These all are very, very similar. And it is Ganjdare. Now I come to Vezmeh cave. About 700 years later, in the same mountains of Jagros, one more village was formed, 7200 BC, calibrated dates. And the skeleton found there from the cave was compared with another skeleton found in Turkey from the same time. Turkey is called Anatolia. Here, these authors, Brau-Shaki 2016, they found that the Wes-May DNA compared well with Indian DNAs, whereas the Barsin DNA of Turkey, it compared with the older European DNAs. And they found by the method of genetic dating method that they had been separate for something like 77 to 46,000 or 40,000 years separation in time. You see here that Indian things are matching with the Iranian DNAs of about 9,000 years back, but they are not matching the European DNAs which are present up to Turkey at the same time. That means these people must have arrived there from India. I have put this point to them time and again, but they just keep silent. They just don't reply to it. Now, West Iran, Wezme Cave, Anatolia, Barsin compared. I will not go into much of its details. The only thing is, which I like to say is that the Europeans at that time were black skinned. They were black skinned up to 5000 BC, and the Iranian ones had the white color skin. So this is very important. But they say in that map, original map which I showed, going this way, that way, Narsingan map, they claim that this uh, white people came to India, settled in Punjab, Haryana, and then they hybridized others, Indians who were black, like Andaman people. And that's why in that chart you saw East Asian, Southeast Asian mixing of Andaman and all those with Indians. That was not needed. So, this you see the separation has been pointed out, and this I have put a line to show that these same people migrated at that very time to Central Asia and other regions also. Now, why this line of separation? This I will tell you later. These people, the Europeans who were black skinned, had also migrated from India, but they had migrated long back, 50,000, 60,000 years back. And then they settled there. Indians settled here, and in the middle there was Iran, which became dry desert for a long time. And that is called last glacial peak is at 20,000 before present. It was so cold that all the people, most of the people died in those areas. Okay, now I come to Wes-May. Not only Wes-May, these four are actually all the four such DNAs from that period from Iran in that locality. Now it is the same result. I won't repeat it, but you find a blue square. So this is a Siberian DNA which plots within Indian DNA. Siberian man, somebody migrated to Siberia also at that very time from which it comes. These things are very fundamental and basic facts which need to be included in proper history writing. Now, Brau-Shaki et al. Find that Iranian Zoroastrians are the most genetically similar to all four Neolithic Iranians, followed by other modern Iranians like Fars, Balochi, Southeast Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Brahvi, Pakistan and Afghanistan, Kalash, Pakistan, and Georgians. So we can say that Indians were migrating even up to Georgia. Ganj Dare also showed, while PCA also revealed some affinity with modern Central South Asian population. It is another finding by another author, Balochi, Makrani, and Brahui. These are also close to GD13A. Okay, so this is a screenshot from his page. Now you see here the white skin gene, which is present in all the Europeans. Its name is SLC24A5, and its other names are more difficult. So I will use this. Now come to the impression from these findings that there were at least two great waves, two sets of waves of migrations out of India. One was before 30,000 years, and another was after 12,000 BC, Holocene. And this is the picture made by Stephen Oppenheimer. He is a physician pediatrician and he had studied it in detail. But when he made this map after that, his thing stopped getting published. This is another how the things proceed. Now we come to Neolithic migrations. 6,000 to 5,500 BC migrations out of India in the context of Indus Valley genetics. This abruptly, I talk about a new migration at 6,000, not because of any fancy, but actually a very bad thing had happened to humanity. And at 8.2 thousand years before present, there was a severe sudden cold wave killing most of the people in the temperate regions, most of the people, 90%, 95%, and everywhere, even in India, there is evidence. So archaeological sites become less at that time. And after that, the Bay of Bengal monsoon shifts to Arabian Sea, and then starts what is called in Iranian archaeology Sabz phase. And in my earlier book, I have written it as the wet phase in the Vedic context, which is Yajurveda. It overlaps with Yajurveda. So, one thing is important, what is carrying capacity? Carrying capacity of India is suppose this much of number of people based on our food production. The day it exceeds, people will try to migrate. Fortunately, we are increasing our food production with the help of technology, but there are other countries which start migrating, like Bangladesh and others, to other countries. Otherwise, they will have to die because of lack of food. So, migration was some compulsion. Second wave out of India in Holocene, important wave, was Halaf culture. Halaf culture location you can see in the map. It is Syria, North Iraq, and a bit of Turkey. This is up to Kurdistan region. Now, Halaf culture had a barley which was not like the Turkish barley. It was like the Indian barley grown at Mehergarh before that. Now, they also had Zebu cattle. Zebu is the Indian cattle. It's probably because of in German it would become Cebu, and that may be from some Tamil or South Indian word, which might mean it is called Indocene cattle. So, two things, important Indian things we find there. One is figurine or a statue of Indian cattle with a hump. That is the characteristic feature of Indian cattle. And another thing we find is bones of buffalo from that period. Now, these two things are Indian in origin. Anywhere in the world, if they are found, there are genetic researches proving that. So, these people had migrated there from India. However, in all the books, they write that these people are found in that area in Harap people, and therefore they might have come to India with barley and all those things. Writing this way doesn't cost much. Anybody can write anything, but producing the evidence is the difficult part. Now, people have said from 100 years or more that cattle was domesticated in Turkey, which is called Anatolia. But recently, a scientist, a team of scientists, Stew and Bolongini, what they did, they took the ancient bones, prehistoric bones of cattle from the whole of the region of Iran and Turkey, everywhere, and they found that the Western cattle was domesticated not in Turkey but in Iran, eastern central Iran, under influence of Zebu cattle, because Bolingini has reported one of those bones of this very particular place was of Zebu. Okay. Another thing is near that further east of that area, and just on the borders of Afghanistan, there is a Nishapur or Neshabur. There also Indian cattle have been found from a very long time ago. So these show that we were migrating to Iran with cattle, with buffalo, and these animals could not have lived without the help of humans once domesticated. Related to this, there is another work, quite old. It was by Chirioni, King, and Underhill. Now, Chirioni, King, and Underhill found that one DNA lineage, J2A, and at the same place there, J1. Now, J2A population is found in those areas where rainfall is more, indicating that they had come there from some place where they were used to farming, and therefore they found it best to settle in those places. We should live here. There is a good rainfall and ponds. So, from where they might have come, the authors do not say, but we can say. And J1 was preferring the drier areas, settling in the drier areas. That means they might have come a bit earlier when there was a dry phase in India, and they liked to keep goat and those things, and so dry area is quite suitable for them, like in Rajasthan. Similarly, King and Underhill studied the pottery and other things found in those areas with the DNAs of J2B. And they found that they overlap. So something like culture of Indus Valley civilization was migrating there. Now I come to another picture. This is the current distribution of this DNA, J2A DNA. When some of the authors they found that J2A DNA is present in Turkey and all those areas and India also, they immediately decided that it is an evidence that people from that area must have come to India and Pakistan. So they were granted and they did the research. Authors' names I have also written. Lalji Singh was also in that, and this Ganeshwar Chaube and everybody. So, comparison of our data with worldwide data, including YSTR of 1157 individuals and haplogroup frequencies of some 7,000 individuals, suggests a complex scenario that cannot be explained by a single wave of agricultural expansion from Near East to South Asia. Whereas they could have answered the reverse. They found that this particular DNA is found in all the tribes, ancient tribes like Toda, Chenchu, Banjara, Kamboj, Lohana, and Kashmiri Muslims from different regions of India. So it is not that they were Aryans and they invaded, they are present in even tribes and in South also. Anyway, they found, it is a quote from them, that in Northwest and South India we find the highest variance and oldest time of most recent common ancestor. So the timing, dating, molecular dating of this DNA in India, haplogroup in India, is much older than that in Turkey or Syria or Iraq. Halaf goddess or statue of 5000 BC and Mehergarh goddess of the same period. But Mehergarh goddess or statue has a greater abstract within it. If you find it very carefully, it shows that there is a cross actually in the body of the statue, and it meets at the center, which is the reproductive or fountain of the life. So, and its head turns like Shivlingam. It is very abstract. Let people examine it, our artists. And similar statues, figurines, they are called, figurines are found from Kukuteni Trypillian culture from the same date or slightly later date. This is in Ukraine. And there is another author whose name is Kantanen. His team of workers found that Indian cattle, zebu with the hump, had gone to Eastern Europe and Ukraine particularly, and several breeds of Ukrainian cattle are actually zebu or Indian cattle even today. They have not mixed so much that their original shape can be obliterated, the hump can be obliterated. Now I come to 5500 BC. So Hack, Wolfgang Hack, is a great man. He had been studying for 10 years the ancient DNAs, the bones, DNAs recovered from fossil bones. And he had been publishing those things, but people always hated him. I have met great scholars there in this field, and they hated him and said, oh, his work is a chimera work, it is not reliable, etc. But his final 2015 work involved David Reich also, so it received a credibility. Now, he found that before 5500 BCE, Europeans were black-skinned hunters and food gatherers. This population was replaced by people coming from Asia at about 5500 BC to 5000 BCE. It was a case of population replacement. And in my book, you will find the references of those publications also. in which they practiced cannibalism against their enemies. They killed and even, but that I have not mentioned here. This research did not tell from where did the steppe get its size of population large enough to be able to provide migrants which could replace European population. Other works have provided the answer that the steppe pastoralists had come to the steppe from East Iran and West Iran. Lazarides demonstrated by the study that to the north, a population related to people of Iran ancestry, and thus people of Europe came from the steppe and it migrated through Caucasus and then reached there, the steppe and then there. One thing is very important finding in archaeology, which everybody of this field just ignores. Professor Elst might be knowing the burnt house horizon of Ukraine and Romania, Moldova. About 3,500 years back, there was a time that wholesale all the houses were burnt in a huge area. And archaeologists have studied it. This is their remains, burnt houses. And they have postulated that maybe they had some ritual to burn their houses. They might have all left, gone out of the village, and then burnt the houses. But this is not the case. Never happened. People are not so full of building a house is very difficult. Certainly, they were invaded by somebody who burned their houses. These people whose houses were burned, their DNA was R1B1B, R1B1B. And later on, this DNA disappears from archaeological bones. And after this period, the bones should show R1A DNAs. That means one type of tribe invaded this region and killed all of them. 1% of older DNA is still there, but very small minority. It is 3,500 BC and Yamnaya culture and all those things. So, yes, at that time, 3,500 BC, this was Aryan invasion. Aryans had indeed invaded, but they had invaded Eastern Europe, killed a lot of people, and I won't call them Aryan because Aryans are civilized people. What happened that when they left India, they became barbaric. They lost their culture. Genetically, you can call them our descendants, but they were not Aryans, they were barbaric, and they invaded Europe, killed their own brothers, which had migrated there from the same origin 1,000 years back. And after 1,000 years back, a wave comes from the same original place and kills them because language and culture has changed during this period. So, I will tell you about migration of Indus Valley people to Armenia. What happened? There were at different times, different waves of Indians went out and they carried with them their language of that time, which was present in India. And you saw that those people, about 8,000 BC, they were migrating towards Turkey, Ganjdare, etc. And that is probably the cause that the Anatolian Hittite shows some characteristic of the oldest language in some works. After 1,000 years, we get Kurdish region where Halaf people migrated. After again 1,000 years or 1,500 years, Armenian migration took place. And I quote from the publication. This is from my own books page. Most likely located, but it is a quote from another author. Most likely location of the population that first spoke an Indo European language was south of the Caucasus Mountain. This is David Reich actually. He wrote in his book, page number 120, that most likely location of the population that first spoke an Indo-European language was south of the Caucasus Mountains, perhaps in present-day Iran or Armenia, because ancient DNA from people who lived there matches what we would expect for a source population, both for the Yamnaya, that is Ukraine and north of Black Sea, Yamnaya, and the ancient Anatolians. So it was ancestral to both Anatolians of that time, of later time, and Yamnaya, steppe. But what he disclosed not was that at that point there is evidence that people migrated from India to that point, and that is here. Lazaridis. He found 3 out of 4 Y-DNAs, that is 75% from Chalcolithic Armenia, belonged to the Indian L1A haplogroup. Chalcolithic is almost that time, 4000 BC. And this is his table. And those which I have is encircled with red, they are Indian origin. This is the ancient DNAs found from different periods by that time. Now more DNAs have been found from West Asia. And those in red, but the later authors just avoid talking about these DNAs. L1A, how, why L1, why will I say that they came there from India? L1A. Now, L1 is a lineage which is concentrated here and here and here, and it might have originated either in Kerala, South India, or in Indus Valley. And this has been shown from ancient bones from Armenia that they were Indian. This particular type of DNA. They will say that from there it came to India. This is the same DNA, ancestral. Now I come to Bronze Age out of India migration in the context of Indus Valley DNAs. This is a study by Verdugo. What he did, he collected the bones of cattle. Cattle means cow, bull, from Turkey, Syria, and every place up to Iran. He found that Indian, see, this is peculiarly color coded. These are colors, colors indicate the locations. So, blue color is Iran, and it is all about the Indian Bos Indicus. So their number increases in those areas, all those areas, sharply at about 3500 BP, that is 1500 BC, end of Indus Valley civilization. The cattle suddenly increase in Central Asia, Iran, everywhere, Indian cattle, replacing the older taurine cattle. This happened because of aridity. The whole region became dry, and those cattle which we called Jersey and others here, they cannot survive Phrygian, they cannot survive hot climates. So they naturally died, and those people welcomed Indians coming there with their cattle. Yeah, but these were mostly male cattle. Bulls had been taken there with the help of that. The Indian breed of cattle was produced there. But A later region-wise Bronze Age shift indicates rapid and widespread introgression of Zebu Bos indicus from Indus Valley. This process was likely stimulated by a widespread multicenter drought, in contrast to genome-wide admixture. Mitochondrial DNA stasis, the lower chart, supports that this introgression was male-driven, suggesting that the selection of arid adapted zebu bulls enhanced herd survival. This human-mediated migration of zebu-derived genetics has continued through millennia, altering tropical herding on each continent. Actually, there was a migration at that time to Africa, from India to East Africa, from India to South China, from India to Southeast Asia. And zebu is found now everywhere in Indonesia, everywhere. In Thailand, they call it Brahman cow because it has this. So, yes, now I come to another interesting work from Frachetti, an archaeologist. He compared the wheat and barley and many things from China, India, Central Asia, and many places, their DNAs. And he confirmed that there was a migration of Indian wheat from India to China, Mongolia, all those regions. Very interesting. Millets were coming to India. They were bringing some millets also, but it was going about Bronze Age, 2500. This again shows migration of some plants, and humans also must have migrated, and in DNA studies also it reflects. But this is very interesting. And this wheat was a unique Indian wheat which is now extinct. This wheat was Indian dwarf wheat. Now it is found in only one village in Karnataka. Its name was a Sphaerococcum, scientific name, and people are trying to cultivate it again. It is very good for health, whereas the other wheat is very allergic, and it causes a lot of diseases. This brand, I would say, this author just has drawn this picture, interesting picture. It shows that dark line shows that the number of dark skinned original Europeans fell sharply, and at the same time, this population which had arrived from outside, lighter colored, that increased. And there was a yellow colored at the bottom, that also increases. So, certainly, Steppe and Europe, etc., we are having migrations from India, Iran, and these things have not been brought out by latest authors. Now, skin color migration, I have already discussed a bit. I will explain it here more because white color is the main problem of racism, not amongst Western and Indian, but within Indian also. If you are white colored, then you may become an object of hate by somebody who is a bit dark colored, and vice versa also. So here, and it has become a political weapon also in India and everywhere. So this is the picture on the left, which shows that a particular area of the world is inhabited by white skinned people. But all of them do not have the same gene for white color. Some have different gene, and this on the right shows that the European and Indians share the same gene for white skin, but and they do not share the genes with Chinese or Indonesian and others for the skin color. So certainly they are related. Europeans and Indians, modern Europeans, not those before 5500 BC, So people were initially saying they came here, invaded here, hybridized here, raped here, whatever they, but that didn't happen. Keith Cheng, 2014, it is from a newspaper. Light skin of European stems from one 10,000-year-old ancestor who lived between India and Middle East. In their study, they have included Pakistan and Afghanistan as Middle East, and they do it generally. This is that gentleman's another picture. This is a page from his book, and last line is important, which I have quoted here in larger letters. Last thing. So I should tell you all the 4 points. They are very important. The pattern of people with this lighter skin color mutation suggests that the A111T mutation occurred somewhere between the Middle East and Indian subcontinent. This means that Middle Easterns and South Indians, which includes most inhabitants of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, share significant ancestry with Europeans. This mutated segment of DNA was itself created from a combination of two other mutated segments commonly found in Eastern Asians, traditionally defined as Eastern Asians, names as Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. So there were two mutant segments which were not a gene, they were just useless pieces of DNA. And in Chinese, they are found even today as two useless pieces. But they combined together in some place, not in China, to give rise to this particular gene, which is 1A111T mutation. Now, where this could have happened? This happened after the main population separated from the Chinese population. Then this unity took place and this new gene came, therefore, it is not found in Chinese. This is now I should bring you the real migration map as discovered by a group of authors. Most extensive number of human beings were studied, and it was funded billions of dollars by IBM, computer giant. But it produced a result which was shocking for everybody, and nobody ever refers to this, no scholar. You can see the Chinese and all those people actually have originated from Nagaland, and you see Adi, Arunachal Pradesh, Kalita, and Tibetan, all those people. Not the vice versa. You will always find the popular communistic, leftistic article that people of Mizoram came to India 1,000 years back. People of Manipur came to India from Thailand, or Ahom came from Thailand 1,000 years back. These are all imaginations and bogus. What happened is this, and this was the most accurate technology possible. That is recombinant DNA technology. Recombinant DNA technology means every generation there is a crossing over in the cells, in the chromosomes, and it makes a permanent record for the next generation. It cannot be erased, and it migrates with the person. This whole record put on every generation, on every chromosome, has stayed in us. With the help of that, this was map was created. Suppose what happened? These people left India, Chinese. So they do not have this particular gene, which I named long name, and but those two mutant DNA particles were lying in India, suppose in this location or this location, and they suddenly united once by mistake, and they became a light skin color gene. I suspect this happened here. somewhere in South India, but it was not beneficial. Therefore, there was no natural selection in South India. Benefit occurred when these people migrated north. Vitamin D is already present a lot in South India because sun rays are so direct and straight. But and also it is a myth that Indians are dark skinned. Actually, in Karnataka, I found about 70-80% people were very light skinned, and more darker skinned people I find in Bihar, my native place. Karnataka, Kerala, also a large number of light skinned people are there. So colder regions, basically, mountainous regions. If it is cold, then light skin color is protective, beneficial as it absorbs vitamin D. So this benefit they got. One thing is important here again that Orang Asli is a tribe and Senoi is a tribe within this original Aboriginal of Malaysia who has this gene in about 0.04%. Is it percent or just number? If it is number, then that means 4 in 100. 4 in 100, yeah, it is statistical number. So that is not a small number. But because if they are subjected to natural selection, brought into another climate, their color will become all selected for this. There are other workers, Haak, Olardi, Ellen Toft, which I have referred to in my book. Ganjdare had white skin gene, I have mentioned already. This slide shows you the distribution of this particular gene in India and Europe, it is 100%. In India, also in many parts, it is 100%, which are colder in Himachal Pradesh and Kashmir, and here in Balochistan region. So, Rakhi Gadi DNA, I should discuss. This is the Rakhi Gadi picture published by Shinde, Vasant Shinde, and for making it understandable, I have labeled it. This black is African Malay. This is the original population. From there, this black gola is African. Now, this again divides into two, and this is how he has pictured it very vaguely so that both could be happy, both the leftist as well as the truist. Leftist and truist, there are two groups. So, Reach had vitiated the results of Mota Cave. This I found in an article, so it is important to tell you that Mota Cave is this Ethiopian gene marked here as a black sphere. Now, other authors who examined the Mota Cave DNA data again, they found that the software had been tweaked in such a way that it gave a different result than what actually was. And now you can understand they must have done similar things to Rakhi Gadi and everything. I have written huge book size blog named The Scandale Genetique. La Scandale Genetique, made to sound it like a French. Indus Valley, this is from Shinde article. This pink red thing is Andamani's hunter gatherer, and when they mixed with the Iranian, then they become Indus Valley or Indian. Basal Eurasian, we should know this concept. Unless we understand this, they will be able to manipulate the results and we will have to hear them time and again. So, question is that after the African, this becomes Asian. I have removed the African from. This is Asian. Now, this division, where is this place? Is it Egypt, where this bifurcation between the Andamanis and Iranian and all those took place? If they were coming from Egypt, this will happen there. Or is it India from where these Anatolia, people going to Iran, people going to Anatolia, people going to Europe, this happened? This is now the basic question which will determine the truth. So, suppose what they say that original man came to Egypt and from Egypt it entered one branch, and this branch through Central Asia went to Southeast Asia, and from Southeast Asia it came to India. This is what David Rich has published a map which says, which would suggest it is the first wave, that is basal Eurasian, Europe and Asian, basal, first humanity which came out of Africa. So they claim that it happened from Africa, Sinai area, and there it divided into three: Europe, Central Asia, and one branch through Iran, Caucasus, Turkey. And how did they reach? They went here, and some went from here to here. Okay? This is what they all accept, but there is no evidence supporting it except that it has been written by a great scholar who holds a lot of fund in his hands. It is a page from his book. Now, why did he do that? So, the guru of all these theories was Colin Renfrew. He was an archaeologist, but also a linguist to some extent. So, he proposed that all the languages originated in West Asia. And how they originated and migrated, he gave this picture. To prove him right, all the results of genetics have been manipulated in such a way and produced in such a way that no contradiction between the two occurs. Now, this is what would happen through Egypt way. So you will come to India through Southeast Asia, but if you keep this picture in mind, here the first out of Africa comes to India, and from India things go anywhere. This is again Stephen Oppenheimer in his publications. He has shown this map and also several publications that people come to India first waves before 50,000 years. So, and from here, so basal Eurasian is in India, and from here they go everywhere. This is just Shave. He also showed a similar conclusion that the first wave was like this. After that, it was 80, 90,000 years back. So, in light of these truths, that point of bifurcation has to be in India. And if that is in India, then Ganjdare, Vesme, or Barsin, or ancient primitive Europeans, they all go out of India in different periods. This has to be accepted. And this I have explained by adding a few things. So, this is now very well understandable that about 40 to 46,000 years ago, people go to Turkey from India. Then, after about 10, 12,000 before present, they go to Iran. Similarly, it is from India that they go to Southeast Asia and everywhere. Iranian farmers split from ancestors of Rakhi Garhi at 10,000 BC. This is claimed by Shinde. So that is very consistent with what I showed. Ganj Dare is 10,000 BC, and they can split from Mehergarh people and go there. So no problem here. Thank you.
Any questions here? I was interested in one particular thing that David Wright talked about in his original paper, 2009. So he talked about a particular Indian client, right? There's a gradient of matching between Indian and European DNA, which is not similarly present in the European DNA. There is no gradient per se. So, what would be the may I say response to that? uh, from the out of India side, I mean.
Yes, this is a very good point, and I told you that most of the people who are writing these, using these words in their papers, they are not from biology and they do not know the real meaning of what a cline is. So please study the meaning of cline in a book of ecology. Generally, it is in botany, books of botany. Cline is a gradual change in appearance with distance. So if you migrate towards the west from here, you get certain phenotype, means appearance of people like Haryana people, and then you may get a proper Jat. I say everybody from Haryana is actually a Jat in his thought, appearance, everything. So, and if you come towards east, you gradually find Bihari type people a bit darker, and in Bengal, you find a bit Mongoloid features appearing, and the more you move, more Mongoloid features come. This type of change is called cline, and cline, CLINE. So cline is actually reverse of what they think. If there is a migration, the cline will be disturbed. It will be broken because of some irregular intrusion into it. And suddenly you will find that there is a smooth change happening, but suddenly here Mongolwad village is located near Lucknow. Then you can say that, okay, these are invaders, migrants. But if it is changing very slowly and slowly, that is a natural process of evolution due to climate. And gradually it changes into fully Chinese appearance. So only a proper student of biology can understand this. So does it answer your question?
Yes, I would like to know why the same wouldn't be represented in the European populations then.
Yes,
the gradual change.
because it was formed by invasions. I told you so many examples, that invasion during Bronze Age, invasion during 5500, which replaced, and through Turkey, invasion through north of Black Sea, and they all have come there in and Africa. People from Africa. Newton's Y DNA, if I am correct, either Newton or somebody was African. E1B. It contains a lot of Europeans in that. So that is the reason, okay? And these people have thought that Klein is because of uh, migration. That doesn't happen.
Actually, I'm glad that the perspective is narrower than this 50, 60,000 years. But it's probably even narrower because we are talking about an invasion hypothesis which is centered around 2000 BC to about 1500 BC. And the Aryan migration hypothesis or Aryan invasion hypothesis is focused on that period. And that is when, according to the hypothesis, Aryans came into India and brought with them Sanskrit and the Rig Vedas. And Reich's contribution to this whole issue of how genetics proves the Aryan invasion hypothesis, that I don't think, even if we accept that all of Reich's data, I would argue that even if we accept all his data, his interpretation is totally wrong along any parameters that you would subject a social science hypothesis to. And that I've written on this also. But very, very briefly, Reich's hypothesis is based on one piece of evidence from Rakhi Gadi, that too of a woman. Therefore, the question of R1A1A does not arise, because a woman would not have R1A1A. But based on this one skeleton from Rakhi Gadi and 8 other skeletons from Shehari Sukta and three from Bactria, he claims that all 11 belong to essentially the Indus Valley type. And they represent the pre-Aryan type of the Indian genes. And there is no step genetic component in this. But for 1500 years after the Rakhi Gadi woman, there is still the first trace of genetic step component appears only 1500 years after Rakhi Gadi. That is not in the period 1900 to 1500 BC, but in the period essentially 1000 to 800 BC. One or two specimens outside. That appears not in India proper, but in the northwesternmost region of Pakistan, the Swat Valley. He claims, Reich claims, that suppose that the Aryans came into India between 1900 and 1500, then they married with the Indus Valley population. Then, with the right number of generations, you would find that by 1000 BC, the genetic composition of this mixed ghost population, as they call it, which does not exist, that population would have become like the skeletons discovered in the Swat Valley. And this misses out on the first, most basic component of a social science hypothesis, which is that you should be able to exclude all other possible explanations, the exclusion test. But there is an alternative explanation which is very obvious. Suppose the steppe people did not come into India at all, but settled in the Swat Valley. Suppose that when the Indus Valley dried up, the Indus people migrated outwards to the Swat Valley region, settled there, married, and had a mixed population. In the same period of time, the mixed population would have the same genetic composition as that of the skeletons discovered there. So, this is an obvious alternative explanation, not considered by Reich. And even more, there is a further factor. The the population which was buried in the Swat Valley, it has a DNA gene with DNA character which is predominantly female bias. That is, the step gene is evident in the females, not so evident in the males at all. How does this happen? See, he has also done, Reich has also done analysis of the present day Indian genes and has found that the present day Indian genetics have the step gene, but it is predominantly male biased. In the Swat Valley, it is predominantly female biased. He explains the male bias in the present day Indian men by the assumption that the migration into India was predominantly male dominated. These men left their wives and their cattle, obviously, as Dr. Elst has also pointed out, and you have to emphasize, they left their wives and their cattle outside India. They came in, killed off the Indian males, pre-existing Indian males, the Harappan males, and married their wives. And so the resulting genetic composition was predominantly male biased. But what do you do with the Swat Valley populations, where the step gene is predominantly female biased? Do you argue that what happened was that the women from the steppes came in and murdered all the pre-existing Harappan females in the Swat Valley and stole their husbands? Or is it more probable that this is an example of an out of India migration at that time? The Harappans left, Harappan males went to the Swat Valley and then there married these steppe women and killed off the steppe males. You can't see what is sauce for the gander is sauce for the goose. So this is the kind of logic that he uses. There are other examples which I won't go into, but it is clear that the entire interpretation of his data is itself very, very one-sided. That's the minimal attribute to it.
Actually, these things I deliberately left the details. There is a lot of problem within that article itself, internal inconsistencies. At one point, it says just the reverse because different pages have been written by different people. And thus, I pointed all the internal inconsistencies in the website of bioRxives and proved there that it is a fake data. And then I wrote a very long blog in 4 parts, the genetic scandal, which shows that how placing the same data differently, it is there in a pictorial form, you can access it, gives a different result. So that type of manipulation there.